Okay, thank you very much for coming back from lunch. My name is Ann Lovejoy, and I have great pleasure today to introduce Brooke Edmunds. She's an associate professor at Oregon State University. She's involved in leading the liaison with the Master Gardeners, who are volunteers. And the Master Gardener Program, we act like citizen scientists to help out with some of the projects that OSU is doing in terms of, in this particular case, addressing climate change. Brooke is she's in the Department of Horticulture, and she oversees the Master Gardener Program, volunteer program in Polk County and Marion County. And her background is in plant pathology and horticulture. She has a Ph.D. in plant pathology from North Carolina State University, and her MS and BS are from Iowa State. She lives in Salem, and today it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Brooke Edmunds.
All right, is that on? Yay, okay. One tech hurdle done. I already almost dropped it on the floor, so. All right, well, thanks so much for having me today. Can you see okay with the, okay. All right, so thanks for the introduction. I am your local extension agent too, so if you ever have any gardening questions or things that come up, you can always call our office and we'll get you squared away. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a project that we're doing through OSU and the Master Gardener Program called Garden Future, and we have some of these cards that can get you to more information there. I'm going to talk to you about how we're using this to connect our communication strategy and using extension. I'll talk a little bit about extension in a moment. And then share a little bit at the end about what we're seeing, what gardeners are already seeing. How many folks here have a garden? Even if it's a, yes. All right, my people. Awesome. So you're probably, this bullet point will be a little bit more towards the end, but you'll probably have noticed some of the same things that gardeners across the state are also seeing. And then hopefully you'll feel inspired and get connected with us and join in on our project that we're doing. So before I launch into that, I just want to kind of set the stage. So how many folks are familiar with OSU and Extension? All right, so this is great. I'll go through this quick. So OSU is a land-grant institution, and we have programs in every county in Oregon where we're bringing information from the university out to citizens in the counties. We have our youth education programs, so things like 4-H. Anybody here a 4-H member at one point? A couple of folks, yeah, nice. We also do things like outdoor school, juntos, ways to connect youth and engage them. Oh, that is very small, I'm sorry. We also do resilient ecosystems, so things like forestry, sea grant programs, woodland programs, fire safety, all of that kind of falls under this section. We have a really great program called the Master Naturalist Program. Has anybody taken part in that? If you're really interested in ecosystems, they have these regional programs where you can just like deep dive into the Willamette Valley ecosystem and take some online and do some in-person classes. It's really, really fun. We also do lifelong learning, so Master Food Preserver Program, right? So getting information on how to can and preserve things safely. Food Hero, Better Bones and Balance is some of our different programs that we do through Extension. And then all of our agriculture programs, and this is where the Master Gardener Program is kind of tucked in there, but we also help commercial farmers all across the state. So like the hazelnut growers that you see, or folks doing livestock. We have programs for all of that. And so it's all taking all of that, connecting what OSU researchers are doing, and then helping folks on the ground is what Extension does. We also have our amazing Master Gardener Program. I know there's several volunteers in this room. This is in every county across the state. It's also a national program. international, technically. I think there's folks in Canada and Korea, I think. And in Oregon, we have over 2,000 volunteers. They go through a training and then also continuing education, and are helping their citizens who help other folks in their community. And every county is a little bit different on what they focus on. So, you know, they might be focused on pollinators or native plants and all of that. And so it really is community driven. So here in Marion County, we have about 200 volunteers and another 100 in Polk County as well. So, and that program's open to anyone, by the way. So maybe next year, sign up, come join me. Okay, so that's just kind of your place setting. That's where I'm coming from, is as a member of OSU and Extension. So let me talk to you a little bit about this specific project that we have called Garden Future. And it is another way of making those connections. So bringing what's happening at OSU out to gardeners across the state, being responsive so that it's not just top down, right? That here's what OSU says, but it's you all know what's happening as well. And so having that be a two-way street. And then utilizing our trained volunteers to help also provide information and education out to the public. So there's a couple different pieces to this big project. One is supporting our volunteers, making sure that they feel confident. I mean, climate change is a pretty big topic. You might run into the climate deniers who don't think that anything is going on at all, right? And so just feeling confident to have those conversations, and then also doing some of this community engagement and outreach. And so I'm gonna just kind of give you an overview. And I think questions at the end, right? Is that, okay. All right, so be thinking of your questions. So we took a little different tactic for starting this project, and we really went in communications first. So rather than saying, we're gonna have a bunch of classes and we're gonna teach everybody, it really was, let's start communicating back and forth, having some of those conversations, finding out what's going on. And this helps make these conversations be less, you know, sage on the stage talking at you, and more of a conversation and local, which has been really interesting. We also found that having those conversations, having community connections, it makes it a little bit less scary, and it makes you feel like, hey, you're talking to it's just my neighbor Ann, and I'm gonna be able to talk with her, rather than it being this, well, maybe I don't know how she feels about that, so I'm not gonna say anything. And so it just kind of breaks down some of those barriers. We are really focusing on storytelling, which is interesting because everyone loves to hear stories and hear about what other people are doing. And so talking about climate change in terms of, you know, I'm picking on you because you're right here, but like, what is Ann seeing? And maybe Ann's gonna do a video for us and talk about, I saw this in my garden. Are you seeing this too? It really resonates, I think, with people more than just, I don't know, facts, right? And we're already seeing this sort of shift from, I don't know what's happening, this is really scary, this is, I don't know, to, I'm not by myself. You know, I know that my neighbors are feeling the same way about climate change and how it's affecting our landscapes. And we're gonna get together and start having conversations and get to start doing things together. And we also like it because it centers our gardeners as change makers, that you're not just accepting what's happening, but that you're taking steps and joining in your community and taking some action. So it's been a lot of fun. And the other thing about having this be communication center, it's peer-to-peer. So it's not just the folks at OSU, the professors talking down, it's your neighbor, it's your friend, and you're sharing stories and sharing information, and it makes it a little bit more trustworthy sometimes, especially in this current climate that we're in of, you know, you're just talking to your friends and neighbors. All right, and our goal is to create a movement. So we'll see where this goes. We're only a year into it, but this is our goal. So this is kind of how this project is working, where we're engaging with folks, we're taking their responses, we're kind of activating them. We're saying, okay, Brenda has a story, and we're going to share that. We're going to share it out with folks, distribute it out, and have those conversations keep going. And I'll show you examples of what this is, because this is pretty vague talking at you right now. So we do have a little, what we're calling just some questions. So we're asking folks to answer 3 simple questions. And there, you can access them if you are a QR code type person. You can scan the little QR code on this back of this card, or you can go to the website. If you are interested at the end of this in participating, I also have paper ones where you could just write some of your responses. And we're asking folks a couple questions. One, have you experienced the effects of climate change in your garden? Have you made any changes? Are you gardening differently because we know the climate is acting cuckoo right now? And then what resources do you need? What do you want to learn more about? How can we help you make those connections, find the resources, and get you some information? So we started this project back in just the beginning of 2025, and are connecting with people through email at in-person events, things like this, and starting to get this information. So this is you're in on the year 1 of this project. I just said this, sorry, but there's ways to connect. Once you connect, you're also going to be on our email list where we're sending out occasional information. And this is not just OSU sending you information, it's taking those stories and sharing them right back out. So videos, quotes, tips from other gardeners. It's been really interesting to see. People love this. I mean, that's what you want, right, is that information. We also have a lot of videos. I don't think this is going to play for us here, but it's ways to connect and hear from real people on what they're seeing and happening. Anybody here on social media? Yeah, I know. Like it or love it. Yeah. So we do share out all of this information on our Facebook page as well. So if you are not a friend of the OSU Master Gardener Program, look that one up if you're on Facebook. You'll get to see a lot of this information, and that helps us also connect with other people too. We also have a website. So OSU has tons of information that is related to climate change. We've collected it all into one place so that you don't have to go searching through if you're saying, wow, I've noticed that my garden is really needing a lot more water. I need some ideas for plants to swap out because my water bill's astronomical. I can't afford to just keep watering. So we collected that type of information all on one website for folks. You can get to that on this card as well. So I encourage you definitely to take a look at that when you have time. I heard this morning you had a talk on AI, so maybe when your brain is less full, keep us in mind and check it out. That's a heavy topic. We also have specific information for regions. So Oregon's really diverse, right? If you've lived in other places in Oregon, we have so many different ecosystems, and that means there's so many different ways to garden. You think about, anybody here from like the Bend area? Well, no. Very different gardening over there than over here, right? So we're working to really create these regional specific information too. So our Willamette Valley information is going to be a little bit different than Southern Oregon or the Columbia Gorge, for example. So once you sign up though, and you're in, and you've answered your questions, you are in our conversation now. And there will be ways for you to provide input as well. So again, it's not just coming at you. You also can engage and share your information. Let us know what's happening. Let us know what you need. And then all of that gets shared back out. And with all of this, we really are utilizing our Master Gardener volunteers. I don't know if you've been out at events, maybe you saw them tabling, maybe you've attended one of our classes. These folks are amazing educators. We like to use them for this, right? Because they're gonna go and they're gonna have a great conversation and they're gonna be talking with their friends. And so giving them all of these tips and tricks and ways to sign up and get engaged, that's how that all kind of starts with them. All right, so some of the ways that we are supporting, and some of the same material is also available to the general public as well. So the Master Gardener Program in general, if you're not too familiar with it, again, over 2,000 volunteers. We're in all the counties. They are a very active group of individuals, right? They're giving, lots of hours of volunteering. They're out in their communities, answering questions in their offices, lots of ways that we can engage with them to help connect with their communities. So one thing we have is the start of some regional plant lists. So if you're interested in low water use plants, we have some of these available on our website. You can pull that out. Just to start, there's tons of plants out there, but these will give you a few to at least start looking at. We made this really cool game for our volunteers to take out in the community, and it's this little magnet game. We have some very talented volunteers who did all the artwork for all of those different low water plants and made them into little magnets. And then when our volunteers go to events, they have a little magnetic whiteboard, and folks can redesign their yard on the spot and get advice from folks and just kind of play with these little magnets and say, okay, here's my yard. That tree died in the last ice storm. This one uses way too much water. Here's some options. Let's replace them. So if you see us out in the community, you might get to play our little game and redesign your landscape. We're also looking to have some classes on this too, where you can take a little bit more time and sit down, and then our master gardeners would be there with you to give you advice. Pretty soon we're going to have an online class available. So OSU has their own set of online classes that they offer. And so we'll have one on climate resilient gardening that'll be open to the public as well, so that if you're really interested in this topic and you want to take a deeper dive, that will be available. Hopefully this year we'll get that launched. It's a little bit more complicated than I thought, doing an online class. So here's some of the ways that we're already seeing how master gardeners are getting involved and engaging with their community. So they're going out to different tabling events. This picture is showing that game that little landscape redesign game. Has anybody been to Hortlandia up in the Portland area? This is a plant nerd event. And it's one of the first events in the spring that they have, and they bring in all the nurseries and they're showing off all the brand new plants and things. So yeah, anyways, if you're a plant nerd, maybe look up Hortlandia. But our master gardeners are bringing this information to events like that. We're going to things like the farmers market. If you go to the Salem farmers market, you might see us there as well. Because we're giving our volunteers new information, they're also now reaching out and through new venues. So this was put on by the Center 50 Plus this past year. They had this climate, energy, and resource fair, and they pulled together all these folks from the community who were sharing resources on this. So like the City of Salem's climate program, they had I can't remember the right name, but they had, that document that they released for the city, like the guidelines for the city to meet some certain climate guidelines. Anyways, they were there. And it was a new venue for us, and I thought it was really fantastic because it allowed us to connect with folks who really care about climate. And so we could share that information, we could hear folks' stories, and then see, the folks that are attending this event, what do they want to know about? How can we help them? Because maybe we could create a resource for them and share that back out. So that was fun. I'm not sure if they're going to do that again, but keep an eye out on it because it was a really interesting group of folks in the room. We also have demonstration gardens all across the state. Has anybody visited some of our demonstration gardens? So there's the one in Salem here behind the Marion County Health buildings. There's the Inspiration Garden in Independence is a really great one if you haven't been to that one. But every county has one of these gardens. And they're all doing really interesting work, and some of it is directly focused on, we know this isn't working in our climate, we're going to try some different things. And they're open to the public, you can just go and visit with them. This is the one in Douglas County. Has anybody been to the one in Douglas County? If you're ever down that way, Roseburg area, definitely worth a visit. It's huge, maybe 6 or 7 acres, and it's all set up as these little vignette gardens. And one of them is this climate resilient garden where after they established this garden, they have never watered it since. And it's amazing and beautiful and lush. And they just use the techniques and use the right plants, and we're able to put that in there. Although Jeff here, he was saying this last summer when it was so dry for so long. Remember this last summer where it like just stopped raining and then it didn't rain when it normally was? He said that was the first year that they really noticed that they might have to water this garden that they hadn't watered for like 3 years. So anyways, these gardens are in every county. If you go on our extension website, you can find them. So if you're ever out and about, maybe take a peek. You can just walk through. If say you're over in the Bend area, they have like 3 or 4 over there. So kind of fun. And look for our little signs. So everything in this whole project is branded, right? So we have the branded, and then we have little signs available where folks can just put these out. Some of our master gardeners are even using them in their home garden because they've implemented these techniques. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of switch gears and start sharing a little bit about what we're hearing back. So remember we were asking folks 3 questions. Are they experiencing effects? What are they seeing? What changes are people making? And what resources do they want to know about? So I'll share a little bit about that. So since the project's launched, we've had 1,200 responses. I'm personally impressed by that, but you can always get more, and the survey, everything is still open. So after today, maybe you want to enter and add your voices to what's being heard here. But it's coming in from across the state, which is also nice because then you can see maybe some of the different things that gardeners are experiencing in different parts of the state. And then at OSU, we can start to kind of tailor, okay, here in the Willamette Valley, they need X. They're noticing that the vegetables that they normally start the timing's off. So let's try to focus and get some resources. But in Bend, they need something different. Okay, so our first question is, are folks experiencing the effects of climate change? And this scale goes from on your far left of not really to absolutely. And we're seeing it about just over 4 on a scale of 1 to 5, where people are seeing the effects of climate change in their garden. Are you guys seeing climate change? Yeah. So here's the orange here is the summary of what people are noticing. And then the black is just a couple of quotes from the survey. So focusing on what Oregon gardeners are observing, one, they're seeing increased heat and heat stress, right? You think of those, anybody here when the heat dome happened? Whoa, that was nuts. But even so, having higher and higher number of days over 90 in the summers, even if it's not that extreme, 100 plus, is still stressing out our plants. Folks are noticing a reduced amount of summer moisture. So our climate here in the Willamette Valley, right, it rains all winter and then it gets dry. But when you have, that summer dry gets extended like it did last year, that's going to affect the availability in the soil throughout the summer. And then you start to see issues happening earlier. Longer, hotter summers, higher number of days above 90 degrees. More erratic, extreme weather, those weird ice storms and December, which was like one of the warmest on record, right? That was weird. I had trees in my neighborhood that were breaking bud. And so I'm curious now, like some of the street trees. I just live in North Salem, and so some of the street trees on Summer Street, kind of coming into the Capitol, I was like, what is that? And it was all like the scales from the leaf buds had dropped. And I was like, uh-oh, it's only December. We always get that cold snap. So it'll be interesting to see what those trees do this spring. And then people are noticing that they're losing plants. So mortality, people are losing big trees. They're losing shade trees. They're expensive plants, right, is happening. And you might be seeing this too in your neighborhood of, Doug firs just not making it. This was, I love this picture because it's like the gardener's ingenuity here. This was back from that heat dome event where it was over, I don't even know, what did it get to here? Like 115? Yeah, that was. And so this person has some rhododendrons planted in containers, and rhododendrons like shade, right? They're an understory plant. They knew they were going to have some problems, and I don't know where they got this many umbrellas, but they put an umbrella over them to try to protect them from there. Is this a long-term solution? No, but it worked to get them through maybe this, that stretch of days that we had. So gardeners are crafty. You all are amazing, and you come up with great solutions. Sometimes it's hard to move a tree, you can't, that's heavy. You can't just moving them around. So what are some of the changes? So folks are seeing these things, they're already starting to make changes. So again, the orange is the big theme, and then in the black text, that's just some quotes if you're curious. So what folks are already doing is they're starting to switch what they're planting. So they're realizing that their water bills are getting higher and higher. They're losing plants. And they, folks, you don't want to just keep throwing money at it. You want something that's going to live and thrive. So folks are already starting to switch to more drought tolerant or native plants, because some of our native plants are also just a little bit better at handling our weather extremes. Gardeners are also increasing their use of mulch, so adding organic material on top of the soil to try to hold in that soil moisture. And focusing a little bit more on soil care, giving their plants the best option that they can have. Shade cloth or shade structures, especially for plants that you can't easily move. If you have things in containers, you can just kind of drag them around. But if you have a very prized tree and it's where it is and it's established, it's really expensive to move it or buy a new one and replant it. So folks are adding shade, even for things like tomatoes, where they're noticing that it's just too hot for their tomatoes, and their tomato plants are crisping up. Folks are adding shade cloth and making little temporary structures that go over their garden. And then folks are also adjusting how they're irrigating. The method is more people putting in drip irrigation, which can be complicated if you've ever done that, and it's also expensive because you have another input that you have to do. So just standing there with a hose versus setting up something with a timer and tubing and all of that. But some of that is changing as well. Folks are even noticing that it's too hot for them to be in the garden, so their schedule's changing. When they would normally go out at 11 o'clock, it's too hot some days, so they have to shift and go out earlier or later. This is one that has come up in the Willamette Valley, is this planting calendar. So a lot of times you'll see just plant kale in this month, plant lettuce in this month, do your peas this month. Some of those things aren't quite working right anymore. And so they're adjusting things on their own and trying to see can I get an extra crop because it's been warmer? Like if you had planted some stuff in the fall for a winter garden, you would have had an amazing one in December this year, right? Because it was so warm. So folks are having to adjust things. It can't just be done by the calendar anymore. And then the last question that we asked is, what resources do people need? And this is good for me, because then it gives me something to talk with my colleagues about and say, hey, this is rising to the top. Do we have any information about this? So they want those regional specific lists. So what is going to grow well here in the Willamette Valley? I don't want to have to sort through the whole state. Just give me the list for me. Make it easy for me. Folks want to know about fire-resistant landscaping, since that wildfire is just becoming every summer, it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal. They want local recommendations, and then water conservation techniques. So I know for me, our water bill was a lot last summer. We have a pretty big garden, and I was talking with my husband, and he's like, yeah, we can't keep doing this. And I'm like, no, we can't. And so our plan is to reduce some of our annuals that need a lot more water, and we're adding more perennials. And it's just gonna be what it's gonna be. Folks also want that timely information. So for our communication side of this is where we have a pretty quick turnaround. If, say, in our email that goes out to gardeners, we see some idea rising to the top, we can pull, this is Logan down in Douglas County, we can say, hey Logan, can you make us a quick video about how to use a shade cloth? And pretty quickly, he can just run out to his demonstration garden and make a video, and then we can turn it right back around for folks, which is really nice. We're gonna skip that. And folks also want to make more community connections. I think especially since COVID, everything has been so isolating, which is really great about a group like this, where you come together on a regular basis. And I mean, like, I came in early and I saw people having lunch and you're chatting with each other. Like, that's fantastic. Not everybody has that, and especially on this topic of climate change. So having those connections, the places to talk with people is, I think, gonna be really key, so that you don't feel like you're all alone dealing with this. And then, of course, being OSU, right, we're going to be pulling from our researchers. We have some pretty interesting projects going where they're testing different landscape plants and have been growing them out for a number of years. They invite our master gardeners to come and do the evaluation of them, where they're like, how did this plant do? Did it survive? Do you like it? Because it could survive, but it's ugly, or you don't like the growth habit. And so we have our master gardeners come in and say, yeah, I would actually put that in my yard. It's not, this scraggly plant like that. And so as this project keeps going, I'm really looking forward to pulling some of that information from campus, and even outside of the horticulture department where I am, but from other departments of how might this relate? Like, for example, there's a talk this coming week, and they're talking about using plant waste and making nursery containers, like the pots those plastic pots. And so, so connecting some of that, saying, oh, here's some folks doing some really interesting things, and then looping it back out to our network of gardeners to share and have those conversations going. So that's our little project. It's just getting started, but I'm really encouraged by the response from my volunteers are really engaged with it, but then also the general public too. I think this is kind of hitting a point where people really need information and they need that connection. So I will welcome any questions. That was fast. I will welcome any questions from the group. I thought I was going to have way too much, so I was like cutting. So,
Yeah, I think this is wonderful.
Hi, I'm Brenda.
Hi.
So I grow vegetables, and they always do really well. And this summer I planted them, and they didn't do hardly anything. And then all of a sudden in September and October, they just started going crazy. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Do you know?
Yeah, you can all hear the question, right? Okay. I'm used to repeating it, but if you heard it the first time. So yeah, I think sometimes it's that response to temperature. I noticed that too in my tomatoes, for example. We had a lull. If the temperatures are too high, they might not be setting fruit because the pollen isn't active, and so you get this gap. Yeah, they might just be too hot on a lot of that. They're outside of their comfort zone, but then you get back into September, it cools down, and it clicks that plant, and it keeps going. Yeah.
This is Ken. You've talked about the negative effects. Do you have any comments on positive? For instance, I've noticed done better with some marginal things like artichokes and kiwis, and even the tomatoes are growing better.
Yeah, definitely. It's not all doom and gloom. Some plants may start doing better. So yeah, I didn't lose my artichoke this last year either, which was nice. It's just a matter of determining what we think will do better. And that's the hard part, is that like guessing the crystal ball of like, what will this season bring? Is it gonna bring a cold snap? I know I've seen some information where they're like, oh, well, the Willamette Valley is the new Sacramento, so just plant, and you're like, not quite. And that's where it gets tricky, is, there isn't that research being done to say, this is what's gonna grow well here. A lot of it is gonna be you experimenting, or other gardeners experimenting, and then saying, hey, have you tried this? This cultivar did really great. This one, not so great. Because the OSU, like the researchers, they're not able to keep up with that in time. Does that make sense? Yeah. But yeah, you're going to see different plants. I know the Department of Agriculture had this native plant symposium a couple weeks ago, and this was a huge conversation piece, was all these folks doing land restoration projects, and they're like, well, what do we plant? What will work? And so they're trying to pull information from other places and saying, okay, this is kind of what our climate is. We're going to try a section of this land restoration with this plant, but we're going to hedge our bets and then also try with this other plant.
My name is John.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll go ahead. I'm John.
Hi.
How do you truth things out? Meaning, I could describe some things that are happening in our vegetable garden, but I don't know that they're due to climate. I mean, it's nutrients. It's, I do have some overhead trees that over the years have crept a little bit, and is it just enough that it's getting just enough shade that they're not producing the same? What is it? And, I don't know that I want to just listen to other people's opinions. I'd like some expertise. So,
yeah, this project is definitely a little bit of both. So summarizing, when you get enough people saying the same thing, you're like, this is a trend. Are we saying this is research-based and we've studied it and we've replicated it? No. But we're saying this is what gardeners are seeing. This is the trend. And it gives us some clues. The research-based and that studying, that would happen with maybe our researchers at OSU or other institutions, where they can set up trials, and they are going to say, okay, we're going to hold that soil moisture and the soil nutrient level steady, and we're just going to try to replicate these other things. So it's a little bit of a mix of both for this project, for sure. But we try to be really clear that we're not saying this is this is fact. This is what people are seeing. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. Thank you so much. This is really great. So I work, there's a program here in Marion County called the Little Habitat Program. Mm-hmm. So my garden is all natives, but now they've grown, right, in my nice soil and all of that. They're totally out of control. And I'm wondering how much, I have two big needs. I'm just curious how much you guys are doing this. One is how to prune these natives so that they don't take over the fences and all of that. And the second is, how can I make this into a beautiful garden? Like, how much do I really just let it go crazy, which my HOA does not like. So turning it into a beautiful ornamental garden, yet hopefully still retaining the habitat benefits, and that's where I'm torn. Like, if I prune, do I lose all the habitat benefits, right? So anyway, those are my kinds of questions.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think we've done a class on pruning natives. So far, like, our program's really focused on cultivated plants, like fruit trees and shrubs and, regular trees, but not natives. So that would be something really interesting to have some conversations of, like, with folks that have established native plants. I do think, though, that some of it is that aesthetic of native plants are not bred the same way that many other plants are bred, to have a certain size or a certain shape. And so some of it might be just kind of like, this is what this plant is inherently. It is this kind of scraggly thing, and it gets too tall sometimes. So that might be kind of, so the little, is it backyard habitat or little habitat program is run through the Marion Soil and Water Conservation District. This is like a checklist program basically, but then also I think there's some site visits and things. Really great program to check out. But maybe connecting with them to see, do other people who have established gardens, how are they managing this as well? And maybe there's like an opportunity for some tours to see, I'd like to see how this works. Do you have an HOA too that's breathing down your neck about your scraggly yard, which is a great habitat, right? Like, stop. Yeah, that's really interesting to see how that is, yeah. Yeah, aesthetics, when you get down to talking about aesthetics for gardens, it's all over the place too, right? Yeah. Or get on the board, and then you can write some rules.
Yeah. Question?
Yeah.
Any comments on fruit trees?
How they're handling climates?
For planting, and whether dwarfs are better or worse than regular and all that kind of stuff.
In general, for a backyard, it doesn't matter what the climate's doing. I would recommend a dwarf, any sort of fruit tree, because if you don't, you're up on a ladder, and nobody wants to be up on a ladder. That's dangerous. It's like inherently really hard to deal with a ladder. So climate change, irrespective of that, go with some dwarf trees. It'll be a lot easier for you to manage as well, because for fruit trees, you have to do things in the winter when sometimes it's rainy. So then you're rain and a ladder. But if you can do stuff from the ground, that's great. I do know that there has been some issues with the timing of flowering, the flowering, and then pollinator availability. They've been noticing this little bit of a disconnect, because you have your pollinator insects coming out, but then your flowers might be coming early. And so they're missing things there. So that's something also to be thinking about. There are some, I think it's researchers out of Washington State too, that are looking at different fruit tree varieties and trying to see if there's some that are better suited. Most of their growing area though is in the east part, so I'm not sure how that will translate to the Willamette Valley as well. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gretchen. I used to be with Master Gardener for years, and I have a question Anne may be able to answer.
She's like, I'm on the hot seat.
Do you guys still go out and work with individual homeowners about or
Community gardens. Some of us consult with community gardens.
only? Okay.
Yeah, so generally our volunteers don't do one-on-one home visits, and it's just a liability thing. OSU doesn't let us have any fun and go do that. Sometimes though, if it's a specific problem, they can come out if I go with them. So you can always email me if it's like a specific question that you have, if it's something that I can use as a learning experience for my volunteers, then I can say, okay, Brenda, you've got this one thing. I'm going to bring some of my volunteer friends out, and then we're going to give you some advice. But we generally don't do house visits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I suggest you go to the demonstration garden if you know the name of your plants, because great things go on there, and you can see what they're doing, and you can see each plant or each area in the demonstration garden is ruled by a group of gardeners, and they can tell you what they are doing with that particular plot.
Yeah. It's open. Yeah, it's open to the public. You could walk through. If you come on a Monday morning, that's the work day for the volunteers, so you have better chance of running into someone who could give you advice on things. But yeah, they do have a native plant garden area there.
Great resource.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. Right now, a little quiet, a little sleepy, but come back when it's spring.
Hi, I'm Deanna. this past summer, we joined our community garden, and we're pretty new to vegetable gardening in Oregon. We did it for years in California. And I have to tell you, when we first moved here, it was heaven 10 years ago for us. You know, you could grow anything, and that certainly changed. One of my questions is are frost-resistant vegetables better to use for, say, early spring, later spring?
Yeah, so there's some cultivars that they've studied and they know that they're going to thrive better in some cooler temperatures. So if you know that you want to get in there early before our, frost-free date, I would definitely play with them and try them. They may have different culinary aspects, so just double checking that it still meets your other needs as well. But yeah, why not? Give it a shot and try it out for a year. You could even do some side by side, do your own little citizen science project there, and if you have enough space, you could do a little trial. It can get a little tricky because you don't know what the spring's going to bring, if it's going to be that harsh one or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that a little frustrating is that so the community garden that we have is a field behind a church, and we don't really know what's going to happen with that, but it's supposed to be open to the community, but we don't see people utilizing it. It's like, this is great. Why aren't you guys getting in here and using this? I'd just like to figure out how to expand that.
Is your garden connected with the Marion and Polk food share? Are they in that network?
They are behind one of the distribution centers.
Okay.
And
so the Marion and Polk food share, if you go on their website for gardens, they have a list of gardens that are connected. And so when the Marion and Polk food share gets folks who say, I want a garden, I need a plot, they have a list that they can send folks. And so if you're seeing that your garden isn't utilized, maybe getting connected with that list will get you in front of more people who need the space.
Good
as
idea.
Well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Okay, is this on? Doesn't sound like it.
I don't know. Maybe. Oh.
Had to hit it. Brooke pointed out that a lot of the publications are not up to date with the change that's happened very rapidly about when to plant. And I'd also like to point out that plant tags, when you go to nurseries and read about what it says, like this plant can take full sun. Well, a lot of them can't now. So I would advise, I look at plants I want to get, research them, and figure out, can they take full sun in California, Southern California? Then they'll be okay here. And I also like to mention, I am the plot manager for the perennials at the Master Garden. I'm there every Monday morning, except when I'm out of town, so come by and see me.
Yes. She has a beautiful garden plot, so with really cool plants in it too.
Okay, I have a question about insects. Tomorrow there's a lecture on the oak borer. I think it's oak borer.
Mediterranean oak borer.
Mediterranean oak borer. And 3 years ago, one of the citizen scientist projects was to plant white oak trees. So just so there's a lot of school kids here in Salem that grew those oak trees that we then sold at the plant sale for Marion County in the spring. So here's my question to you. What are some of the things that this audience should be looking for in terms of insects?
Oh boy. Let me get my crystal ball.
No, I know, it's huge. Maybe just succinctly, one or two things.
I mean, I think keeping an eye on what invasive insects are kind of hitting the news. So this Mediterranean oak borer is a new one that's going to affect our oaks, and we know it's in our area. Anybody hear of emerald ash borer? Yeah, like don't plant any ash trees, right? So I think staying kind of alert to what's happening with insects, what the invasive ones are coming in. You can get that information from the Department of Agriculture. They have a nice website that just kind of is like, here's our pest alert. Here's what we've noticed coming. Some of them become a big deal and some of them don't, like the brown marmorated stink bug. You might have seen those guys around, annoying. So keeping alert to that, but then also in general, if your landscape is stressed, they're going to be much more attractive to many types of insects. So keeping your trees and shrubs as healthy as you're able to, even if this isn't quite the best climate for them to be growing, but making sure they're watered will give them the best chance of making it through things. So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we have
thanks.
time for one more question, and then we'll take a break. Does anyone have a question? Okay.
All the way in the front.
Of course it's
making
up
you
front.
Walk. Where did my bees go?
Where did your bees go? Yeah, some years are stressful. Does anybody have mason bees? Take care of mason bees? Last year was a really stressful year because it was warm and dry, and then that timing of the food. So some of it has to do with making sure they have what they need to stick around. So making sure that there's flowers, there's food source for them, making sure that if they're ground nesting bees, that you have a place for them to nest, that you're not, we said, mulch to protect the soil moisture, but if you mulch your whole yard, then your ground nesting bees won't have a place to go. Some of it too is just that having a stressful year, right? Where it's hot, and but maybe they'll come back in future years. So it's hard to predict, I know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
We're so
thank you.
delighted. Yeah.